Hey everyone, somebody asked me to convert some code that I wrote in RxJS for a LeetCode question into something that would be like C++. They said, if you had C++, it would be like this. And I said, okay, thing is, it's going to take quite a while for me to figure it out. And mainly because I've never done it before. When I write async, I write it in RxJS. Sometimes I use promises, but usually I'll use RxJS because it's really advanced and it does a lot of things for me and it makes it so easy to write this. The previous iteration of this code I wrote in 30 minutes. This version took me an hour and a half. To put it into perspective, that's quite a long time. But it doesn't mean that people that write C++ or write code like this are going to take just as long as I did to write it. The thing is, I'd never done anything with multi-threading in a class-based structure like this. Because this is the first time I'd ever done it in this way, it was definitely going to take me a lot longer. It's like you took away all my tools and you gave me something else, but it's still a really enjoyable video because it shows you how you can take something that was written in RxJS and how much more effort and more work goes into that behind the scenes if you wanted to write it yourself in a class-based structure. Normally, I would expect they give you a function, you put them all together, and then you have to order them. And then you call the print number function, it executes like whatever the output is. It looks like here, so print number, you give it an X and it outputs X, where X is an integer. Oh, so that's why you're saying use waits. These are coming in asynchronously. You have to have a loop here, and then you have to wait. You have to know the order ahead of time, and then somehow make sure that you're appealing to the order. You would have to have something that says current output function name. This would be like right now when you start it, it's 0. And then the second time it goes, it would be once 0 comes in, you call odd. You set this to odd. And then once that comes in, you have 0 again, and then it goes back to even. Okay, I see what you're saying. This is making a lot of sense now. I could do it as a class in JavaScript. I could just do class 0 even on. Let's write this. I can do this. This is going to be fine. We don't have to define a private value. We can just, the way it would work in JavaScript is you just define in the constructor. They don't have private values, actually. That's a good question. They don't have private values. If you have functions, you get them, but not in classes. In the constructor, we'll just do this .n equals n. That's fine. I'm going to rename it. I want it to be named this, number of output values. Okay. And as public functions, we will have access to 0, even, and odd. And obviously, this will return 0, but we don't want that. It's not going to return 0. It's going to add it to an array. We have to have an array here. This dot output is an array, and we'll have to calculate this output once we hit a certain number. Then we have to have like calculate output, something like this, and we will look at this dot output and we'll join it and create it just the same that we did in the other one. That'll make a string out of it. Just print. No array, just print. You're saying, oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Because this can go straight in the, yeah, if you don't do something like this, and if you don't have a new line, then it won't print out a new line. In our case, if you console log in JavaScript, this will cause it to make a new line every time. That's why I was doing the array. But if you're saying, like, let's say it has a print number function that they give us, I'm assuming that's what's going on here. They're giving us a print number function. Then we're just going to call this. We'll have, just like we were tagging before, the current output function name. I don't have a better name for this, but we're going to start with 0. And we have to have some way of assigning these out. And I think we're just going to have to hard code it. We're going to want to print it and then change it. Each one needs to check if this is correct. If it's this, can I rename this something? If it's 0, then if it's not 0, we'll return because we don't care. Unless you're going to tell me you need to wait. Oops. JavaScript is single threaded. And if you wait, it would cause the application to hang. Let's just finish this off. It'll be odd. We want the value, so we don't want to return. At this point, it would be 0. If it's not 0, then we want to hang on until this is 0. We have to have a while loop here. You don't really multi-thread in JavaScript. You can. There are different ways to do it. But in JavaScript, the way you do it is you have something called an event loop. It's similar to what you're talking about. You have a while loop essentially in the background, and it's executing different processes at different times. The reason you do something like this is that maybe this map here would be synchronous, but it could go off and execute something else so your application doesn't hang, and then it could come back and do the cat map. That's why breaking these up can be helpful. JavaScript is a little bit different for how it executes, but I can fake the thread by basically putting a while here. This will cause it to hang. If I put while true, for instance, it'll sit here until this is changed. But I don't know if it'll execute anything else. The only way this would work is if these are asynchronous. The even can happen while this while loop is happening. That's a good question. I don't know if it's possible. There are ways to do this. I have other ways to do this. Okay, I got another idea. Promise. We want it to wait though. Let's try it like this. So we got promise.resolve. And that creates an asynchronous function that was asynchronous task, essentially. I don't know what C++ calls it. If we put What do we want to resolve on? We want to resolve on this. Okay. And we want to keep looping it, and we want to keep looping it until that is true. This is a way to do it asynchronously. It's basically saying, at this point, saying free up the thread so that something else can execute, and check this when your threads are done. That's essentially what it's doing. Because otherwise you'd have to hold it, and it would just sit here on the while loop forever and never stop. You can't do a while on this because something else you're saying asynchronously has to call these. It can't happen, I don't think, with JavaScript. That while loop would just be the execution thread the whole time. I know there are ways around it, but I think that's how it would work. You'd have to use like a generator potentially to get around that. This is our output function name here. And we want to check to make sure the output function name is 0. It is 0. And if it is, then we will continue execution. Otherwise, we want to call this again. Then we need to have, we can call 0 again ourselves. We don't want to call 0 though. We want to sit here and then tell it to keep checking this name. We want it to keep checking this name until one of these is executed. Basically, no, actually until it's equals 0. That's how we're doing it. If this is the case, then we can continue on. Otherwise, this would be like, at this point, this would be a print number. No, it'd be print number. We need to know what the number is. This one only prints 0. I guess that's what it's doing. And then this would promise.resolve this again. I think that's, actually we can just return it. But we need a reduce function to create all these. There's no way, how can I chain another dot then? The only way to chain it is to call a function that returns this so that you can execute it again. It actually would return that. But have a promise. Oh, I know how to do it. We don't need that. This dot 0 promise equals that. Okay, I think I can do this. And then we return 0 promise, which will always return this. Okay, think this will work. Man, this is gonna be tricky. I don't even know if it's gonna work like this. But in JavaScript, we're saying like resolve this at the next phase when you're doing it. So it's essentially, you have that loop going on in C++, and you can execute multiple things like wait till this comes in and then continue here. We don't have that capability because there's a loop going on in the background, but I'm not running it. There's no main function. That's happening all in the C code behind the scenes. Print number 0, otherwise 0 promise. That'll return this again, and we'll execute the dot then. No, I need this dot then on the promise. I think I need it here. Yeah. And then that'll work. That should work. When we hit the dot then, it should return this object again, which kind of sucks. I want to return just the dot then part. I feel like putting this in here is redundant at this point, and I can't find out another way to do it. In fact, this isn't going to work right anyway, because this needs to be this dot, because we need to look at the state every time. Promise result, then this the output function name 0. I think this is how you would do it. This is redundant, like I said before, but I think this will work. Do I need to chain another then? That's a good question. It's a good question if I need to chain another one here, so it'll happen every time. I feel I don't know enough. This is, you got me. You got me good. We can test this, by the way. I would need a class, don't I? I don't want a class. I have a class. This is correct, and this is not correct. This can only happen after this point in time. This cannot be a ternary. Yeah, this can't be a ternary. So I need to do multiple things when this happens. I could make it a ternary, but it wouldn't read well. If that's the case, we do this, and then we want to also break out of this loop that we're doing, and I think this will break out of it. Otherwise, I'll return that. And that should continue it. This is going to be crazy to find out if it works. I'm really curious now. I don't think it'll work. I think we have to put a dot then on this to execute this functionality again. This happens to be a name function that we can keep executing it every time. But I'm curious. Let's, not worry about these functions, and we don't care about this now. I should be able to new this up now. We go in our console. I'm going to go to a different one, only because I don't want any of their code running in the background that could affect our code. No, it's a problem. What is it not like? I expected this at line 22, right there. I'm wondering why I'm not seeing errors here either. But maybe it's because I haven't saved the file. Okay, yeah, something's wrong. It shouldn't be these colors. Unexpected comma. That means I didn't close an extra parenthesis there. And now it's erroring about something else. That's fine. I don't care about that error. Just not an error that's important for what we're doing. We're going to new 0, whatever, and we're going to have to give it a number, which is 2. Actually, I just want 1. And then I also want to set this to something, 0, even, odd. No. Okay. Now I want to call it. I want to call this 0 function. And this should execute the first time. Actually, I can mutate these values because they are public, so I can mess with it at the moment. But let's try this. We're going to give it console.info, which is our print function at this point. And we got 0. Okay, that worked. Now what we can do here is we can 0, even, odd. Now it's set to odd. It did this. If we call this again, this output function name is set to odd. In fact, we can check it real quick. 0, even, odd, dot output. Yeah, it's odd. Okay, cool. Chaining cycle detected for a promised number of prompts. I have no clue what that means. Never seen that error before. What I'm wondering if, like I said, I have to create these .thens over and over again. I can create a function that we just keep passing in. So if this happens, we can get this is the promise, and we would put the .then at the end. And then we have a .then that can keep calling .thens on itself. I don't know if that's going to work like we expect, but we could try it. Well, I want it to keep working in the background. I don't want it to error. And if it's keep working, then I can change it manually. I can change this value to 0 again and see if we get a 0 output. That's what you're saying. What happened in C++? How can I force this? Let's create a function here out of this. Something, I'll just name it in a second. We already have this. What is this? This is the 0 function? Oh God, we need this. I have a way to pass this. I have a way to do that. I need this to be a function though. This function type allows you to have a this context. So this function will take a print number function. I don't really care about that. I think we just return it. Return 0. That's fine. I don't need the print number. I do need this. So I'll have a this context. I need that. I'll have this too. We would create it like this and then do it this .0 promise .then like that. And then in this case, it would call something that we gave it, and something would receive the previous value, which is nothing, because we're using state from the class. I wonder if this will work. Is it going to say it's already defined? Yeah. Okay. Oh, there we go. Undefined. Now we're returning the value. The return won't work because we're in a .then. So we do need to call the print value function. This needs to be a function that returns a function. That's what needs to happen here. Now this is where it gets tricky, but yeah, it's a function that once we call it, it returns us the function. I'll put it down like it's fine. It returns us this function. This function needs this context. Okay, what if I did that? Is that going to mess anything up? I'm curious. The question here is going to be this context. When you have functions and functions, this context can be all weird. I'm trying to figure out a good way to do it. And I don't quite know if I can name this self here. With C++, this is like fixed to the class. In JavaScript, this changes for every function. You can make it so that it's this fat arrow function, and then it will take this from the place that it was defined. I guess what we could do instead is to make this easier, we would just define it in the class. And that way it'll have access. If we just did this, that would be way easier. I don't know why I'm putting it out there. I'm not used to working in classes. But I guess I can just do that. If this gets called and we want to pass it in the print number function, that will make this work. And this will hopefully stop execution here, and then that will keep it going. We can log when this is happening as well. I want to see what happens when we get here, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to like what we're doing. We'll try it. Okay, I want to do this code. And then I want to do this code. I should copy these somewhere. Okay, we got undefined again, but also did not work. Even though we're giving it a print, we are not giving it a print value function. We need to call this first. That's why it's not working. Okay, what we're doing is we're getting this. We're passing into our new 0then function. And then that's going to return us another function that the .then will call when it gets to that point. This needs to have another .then that calls 0then. Okay, that's the thing I was missing. That was what's different. And this, we also need to pass it the print number function. And then we'll call another function that does all this. Is there any other way? I don't think so. I think this is how you're going to do it. Is there a way to maybe call this? So I could do new promise, and then that gives me a result that I don't want to mess with that. I'm going to leave it as is with the duplication, and I'll figure it out later. I just want to get it working. I don't even know if this is possible. I'm trying to fake something in JavaScript that is not like a thread weight. Check it out. Oh my God, it's working. Okay, if we change this, it's probably going to cause an infinite loop. I want to quickly figure out how to do this before it errors on me. There's an output value function name. No, output function name. Equals 0. Oh, did it die already? Oh man, I need to put a timeout on this. Yeah, it died. I can't find the tab. Create a new one, but yeah, it did work. It did work exactly as I expected. The problem is because it's not thread safe, it killed the thread. It just died. It kept going. I didn't get a chance to do this. What if we did this and we copied this code at least so we can get it to output and see if it happens? And I can open a new thread, a new tab. I just want to kill this one. Okay, there we go. This is exactly where I want to see my send feedback, all in the middle of the page, like all over the dev tools. That's so confusing. Okay, let's try it again. About blank. Oh, you're saying it should max print n zeros if n is the input. Yeah, we haven't done that yet. We haven't been looking at this. Right now, I just want to see if this piece works. And then I can look at like limiting the output. Because right now we're controlling the output at the moment. We're calling 0, and then technically we should be calling 0 again at different times and call it an odd. We can define that in our code here. And then we can make sure that, it kills off the listeners. So you're basically saying once this is reached, we're done. It's actually this times 2. I would wonder how, I'll worry about that later. Okay, we got our class, and we got this code. Technically I could be running this in Node, and anytime I save, it'll just rerun it, but I'm doing it right now in the console. We should have gotten 2 zeros. I think this is going to kill the console again. Yeah, it's killed again. This happened, and then this got called, and then that got called, but because it's like an infinite loop, it's still doing what the while loop would do. It's not 100% like the while loop, though. It's not exactly like that. There's a slight difference. If we can use setTimeout, I think we're good. I think promise.resolve is the problem here. I want to call the .then, but I want the .then to have a new promise. Okay, I can do this. It's got to be... We're going to return a new promise like this, which gives us a resolve function. And we're going to call a .then on that promise. No, that's not how this works. That's not how this works. How do I make a new promise? Why can't I remember how to do this? Okay, new promise. Where are you? Executor. It's a function. Oh, it's a function with this as an arg. Okay, I remember now. Okay, cool. We give it, actually, no, we're giving it a callback. That's a weird place to put that. Okay, we're going to call setTimeout. And this way we can define a timeout for it to call it again to check. I know we should be checking often, but I'd rather give it a wait, and that way it won't cause it to infinite loop, or at least it shouldn't. Okay, if this, then we wanted to execute this function. Yeah, which is what we're doing. We're calling this function again, which causes it to go through this. And then if it gets into a weird situation, I don't know if we need to do 0 promise at this point. Technically, I think we just return this. We return a new promise. Why do I need this at all? Once we executed this, that's 1 out. Then all we care about is every other time, and we're doing a setTimeout. Why is this erroring? Is it erroring because of the compat thing? Resolve is not defined, is defined but never used. Oh. Okay. Because we can call this function from here. We don't need this. We really don't need this. I don't even need it to be a promise. I can make it a promise, but I can literally just call this a 0 wait. That's what it is. It's 0 wait. That doesn't make any sense. I'll just do that. And I can get rid of this ESLint rule. ESLint disable next line. I can do compat. There. That'll just disable that rule. Okay, is this what we want? I'm hoping, and we'll find out. Why we have a return here? I get that makes sense. This return also makes sense. Okay. This did not log. Nothing's logging. Is our console dead though? No, our console's still alive. Let's check this out again. Resolve gets called. This, you know what? We can just we can go here. See, is it giving me? No. There's a way to get to the code that's running. The class we added in, and we can put a breakpoint in it. Because I want to see where we are, and I want to see what's going on. It's like this class here. If we put one console log in it, like in the constructor, then I can get access to the file. Started or constructed, you could say. If we do that, I have full access to the file. I should. Why don't you? Oh, the semicolon. Okay, it's gone. It did not execute. Oh no, we have to do this first. Yeah. I remember now. Okay, there. Bam. Okay, we've got our code. I don't want the console. I want to put a breakpoint here, and I want to put a breakpoint here, and then I'll open the console again, and we will execute this function. This should return 0 like it did the first couple times, but it did not. we have not hit a breakpoint. We have not hit a breakpoint. We got undefined, which is fine because this function here returns undefined. 0 returns undefined. That's fine. But I want to, this console info should have executed, or something should have executed here. But we got to call this function. Because I said it's a function that returns a function. We don't need that now. We don't need to return a function, do we? No, we don't need to return a function anymore. Well, that made the code a lot easier. Because we're always setting the timeout, and that's our essential like function returns a function. It's down here. This is the return function here. Okay. I think we figured that out. That explains why it didn't call that area of the code either. I still want my constructor. Where's my, oh yeah, I have to call this. What I could do is just take these and put them at the bottom here. And that way when I copy this file, it'll do the exact set of steps. I really just want this much, and then I can copy these myself. Is it erroring? Does it not like this? Because I don't have a const? Okay. Yes, and now it's complaining it's not used. That's a separate issue. We got constructed, and we want to call this, we'll get 0. We did, and it did not like that 0 then is not a function. This dot 0 then is a function. It's a function here. It's clearly a function here. This style of function says, take the this of the parent. It binds itself to the this of the parent function. That should be fine. I wonder what's going on. We got to put a breakpoint in. I wish I could have put one right here. Okay, let's refresh again. Let's copy this. We'll create it. And then we should have a log. Yes. And I want to put a breakpoint at the point where it's going to break. Which is right here. We call this. And this shouldn't even hit here. It should do the print immediately. This is interesting. I want to put a breakpoint at this spot too. Okay. It did get here. This is exactly what we expected to have happen. Print number, 0. And then it should be done. This function should die. And nothing else happened. I think it's because of that. It's right there. Oh, I figured it out. Okay. Yeah. Because before it was a function that returned a function. Now it's just a function. This is just my fault for not realizing what I was doing. Okay. We created it. We output 0. And then we make it loop constantly. And then we output, aha, it's working. I could do it. We have this code at a point where it's going to be more like what you would expect to see in C++. Is there anything else crazy here? Do we need to return that value? Yes, we need to call this and then return it. Do I need to return anything? No, this just keeps calling it in itself. Technically, this could create a Stack Overflow. I don't think so because of setTimeout. I don't think this will create it, but I don't think we need to return either because we're not looking at the value of this anymore. We're just calling it. And this code became cleaner as we wrote it, but then this part's ugly as crap. And there's not really a way to fix this except for with ArcGIS, you can call a timer here, and then you can set the timer to, let's just look at the ArcGIS piece real quick. We don't have to write it, but we could do it, and it would honestly potentially make it look better. We'd have to create a tab like that. Yep, that would be how I would do it. Actually, in fact, you don't need the tab. You don't need any of this. You just subscribe to it. And it will auto unsubscribe because it's a timer. It unsubscribes when it's done. And then we'll do this. That's it. With ArcGIS, all of this becomes that. And I kind of want to do it, but I can't because I can't execute it in the console. I don't have ArcGIS running, and it's a library, JavaScript library. But we're just using straight up JavaScript. So let's see if we want to, is there a way to make this universal where we don't have to write it every time? Like create a function out of this? Then this 0 then could call, we don't want to call 0 multiple times. That was not the goal. Because if we call 0 multiple times, that could cause other issues. We want that anytime this gets called, it creates a waiting thing. And that's going to create a wait on it. You could have multiple waits though. You could have 3 0 thens that get called and they're just sitting waiting to be executed. As soon as a 0 occurs, all of them would execute at the same time. So the question is, at this point, is that with the original question here, with this original question, when the 3 threads are fired asynchronously, are they fired in like the ordering that we need? Is it like 0, 0, 1, 0, 2 that get fired? Or are they calling the threads like 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, even, odd, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, even, odd? You see what I'm saying? Or odd, 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 odd. That's what I want to know. I wish they would show how to generate the callers. Because yeah, I can't run the C code behind the scenes. I don't want to write that. This is already hard enough to do in JavaScript. I definitely don't want to have to learn C++ just to write this solution. As you can already see though, the ArcGIS solution for me, this is a lot simpler to do. This took me way less time. Even figuring this piece out took me some time. I had to think about it. Like, I've done this before, but I didn't think about it. In RxJS, they have something called delay, and you can set like a delay of 150. It's the same as the timer, but you can put it as an operator, which is interesting because sometime earlier in the stream, I was talking about dynamically creating a delay, and now I just realized I could, that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work. Wait, okay. All right. So I got this function, and I don't want to call it 0 then, but I don't know another way to do it. I need this to create multiple listeners, basically. This is like saying asynchronously go out and do your loop. At the same time, listen for more requests on 0, and if they are, create more loops. Now, what if we did something more interesting? What if the output function name had something to do with an index on it? That way, when you create this loop, the loop has an integer associated with it, and that way you know which one it is, because you could have multiple of these running in the background. And we would want to know which one is being output, especially with the even and odds, because we want to get the right number. We want to get the first one in, the second one in. This just does not need a print number. It also needs an index. And the index will, I hope we don't have to store it, but we will. Yeah, we will. This dot 0 index equal, we could do plus equals, but 1. And we need to create these. This is how I would do it. In this case, like I said, we don't know what the order they're supposed to execute, if you can have multiple or not. My example, they executed all over the place. You could have that memory problem. We will potentially have that memory problem, but we won't have a Stack Overflow. And that's what's most important to me. I don't want a Stack Overflow. Is there anything else we can do here? Now it needs to check its index. When it gets set to that, this is going to be output function, and it's going to be 0. It's going to have a name here. I can create objects on the fly with JavaScript. 0, and then we're going to do what's this, index? Don't want the index. Yeah, I want the index, which is also 0 for the first one. Okay. That gives you a little bit more information. And we can check the name of the output function is correct, and the index now has to match. I wonder what else you'd call it. I think index is correct. Here's and this is the index that we passed in. And that will stay consistent as long as we keep passing this through to every 0 then. I don't like the name of this. I want this async awaiter function. And actually, oh my goodness, we can make this something that we do over and over again. Because this if statement is all we care about. How about this? Output function. I don't want to call it that though. This would be this dot output function and then output function. This is the waiting function. Function.index. It's not waiting function. It's not a function. It's a wait execution info. We want it to be the info that tells it to execute. We can pass these in now. This can be generic. And then the output function name would be something else. We have to put another arc here. Output function name. This is the one that we're going to set it to once we're done, and we would print, and we would want to print a number. We have to know what number we're printing. We're going to have that in state. Then we also need to know the number we're printing. Instead of print number, I would wrap this myself. I just will call print number here. This will be a different print number than the one we're passing in here. I'll show you in a second. Is this all right? This is the current output function. This is the execution info that we were sent in, and this is the output function name. Now, I'm going to make this an object. I'll deconstruct it here because it's easier for me to pass it in than having to worry about the positioning of 3 different arguments. This is I don't want to call it print number. Technically, it's print number. Let's leave it. I just don't want it to be the same name as the other one that we're passing in, because we're actually going to wrap the other print number. That way we can control the number that ends up getting output without having to know what the number was when we're in here. This is now our generic code, and this index needs to be execution index. And this print number needs to be print number. I think that's correct. And yeah, everything's good. Everything is good. Now I need this. This is I'm going to call it the waiter. That's fine. And instead of 0 then, we're calling this dot waiter. Over here, we're calling, yep, I already got it. Looks like that's good. Waiter, and then we're going to pass it an object of a bunch of stuff. And the difference is that this print number is going to be custom. And actually, it has to return a value. No, print number does not return a value, prints a number. Okay. We're just going to do console info. Are we doing this anywhere else? I'm passing in the print function. Oh, we just need to call the print number that came in, and we need to pass it a number. In this case, it's always 0. That's it. We're creating a new print number function that is wrapping that one. And so this function here doesn't really care what the print number function is. It just cares that it calls a function. This could also be called a callback. That might even be better. And I would rather have it in this order. When the callback get called first. That's fine. That's fine. We'll just call it the callback. That way it's less of a problem where you don't know which print number function it is and that kind of stuff. I want it to be clear what's going on. And we do need the index. That was part of the data. This is an object of data. It has a name, and the name will always be 0. This name will always be odd. And no, it won't. This will be even sometimes. How will I know? I can base it off of the index. Yes. Yes, it's the index mod something. Okay, so if it's 0, then it's odd. So let's say the index starts at 0. We actually only want to up the index after we've done the first execution. We start at 0, and then that is 0. Therefore, the function is odd. Yeah, okay. And we need a ternary. Yeah, we're almost done. This is pretty good. I'm sure I'm not missing any messages. Even, okay, and then that will get pumped, and then we don't care about this. We still need to put these in here, though. We need the index at the time of execution, which is that. Okay, and then it doesn't like this for some reason. Oh, okay. That's the 0 done. Now we just copy paste this. And we're going to have a little bit of trouble with the odd and even because we're going to have to store not just the index, but the current value. And they start at 1 and 0, even value and odd value. And this one starts at 1 and this one starts at 2. And I want to pull these values apart from the indexes. Okay. I could do 0 value here, but it's always 0. I guess it's fine. That way we're consistent. Okay. Print number is no longer print number, it's callback. Okay. And then, so there's our 0 function. This is our even function. And this is where we're going to get a little tricky. Just like we're doing that, instead of 0 index, this will be, what is it called? Even index. And this is even, no. Yeah, this is what it is. This is going to go back to 0. Both of these other ones are only going to output back to 0. I'm probably going to copy paste this into the other one then. And then the print number is going to be more unique because this is going to be, ooh. I can't do this. Can I? What if I did, and the other ones I did plus? I could do that. It would be double plus though. Plus equals 2. I don't want to equals though. I don't want to like mutate it on the output. I think I can do that though. Let's find out. Yeah, I can mutate on the output. We have to like b equals 2, b plus equals 2, and we output 4. Yeah, that'll work. It's not what I want because these start at 0 and 1, or 1 and 2. I would have to start this at like -1 and this at 0, which would be very confusing. I want to do plus equals 2 after I output the value. Oh, I can do that. I can do that. Okay. This even is like even value. And I want to print that. And then I do this even value plus equals 2. Actually, this index does not matter here. The only benefit of it is it queues up the other ones in memory so that they're still there. But whenever it executes based on the current state. We're not sending it the number, which we could do. We could, in this callback, we could have enclosed over the value here. If we created a value here like this, even value, like this is a local state version of the even value, it'd be this even value. That's the value at the time of execution. But because we need to add 2 to it every time, yeah, this adding 2 could be done here too. The next time it executes, it'll have it. I'd rather do it that way, but we could do it either way. It doesn't really matter. Because at the time this callback gets called, then it will bump the value. The thing is, I want this function to be in control of what the even value is. I don't want this function to be in control of it because the current value would be 1, and then it would never get bumped to 2 until after one of these promises here executes up in our waiter up here. One of these finally executes the callback up in this section, then it would bump it, and that would be a little confusing. I'm just gonna put it at the bottom here. It matches, and it's a little bit cleaner. And then now I just can copy this down here because it's going to be the same code. It's just odd now. That's the only difference. Actually, I did want to make this odd. Yeah, that's the only difference. Okay, this should be good to go. I want 2 numbers, let's say. And then when we do 2 numbers, I will give it the print value function. I can call these in separate threads, but right now I'm going to do them in order. I'm going to call odd, and then even, and then 0 again. Yeah. I don't need to change this name anymore. We're doing that. Okay. This should work. Has already been declared. Seriously. Aha. Can I read index of undefined? Did I not pass an execution in? info indexed. This dot odd index. Of undefined. That means this is not being passed in. No, it is. What about this? What if this is wrong? This is also a stupid name. Output function. Oh, and look here. My code's broken. I didn't even realize. This is the execution state. How about that? Execution state. This is the execution info. That's fine. I don't know what else to call it. This is the current execution state. And this is now the execution state that needs to be set to the next one. I don't know what the index is going to be for the next one. That's a problem. I don't know what the index is. The index, oh no. The index needs to be, for each one, needs its own index, but I need to know what not only the current index is, but I need to know if I'm the first one to go. I need like not the output. It wouldn't be output function anyway. It would be the execution state. I need the execution state's index, and the execution state's index has to have the zeros index. That's not going to work. I need to know like what all of the indexes that are out there currently active. Well, I would need something else to say like active indexes. This dot push. No, this dot active indexes equals this dot active indexes, and then oops, and I can check for 0 and add one to it. That'd be this dot active indexes dot 0. Oh, I could just do a push. Let's do mutations. That's fine. Dot 0 dot push. Bam. That tells me this is now an active index, and now I will know what the active indexes are, because at this point I would pop it out of there using the name. I could pop it. After the callback gets called, we're done with it. We can do dot execution info dot name. I don't need this check here. I will need it. I just don't have. I don't know how I'm going to get this info. I think we're going to have to check that the current index off of the name. We would have to see the first value in it. And I think you use shift to remove something from the beginning of an array. Array.shift should return. Okay, it returns the removed element, but was it doing? You know what? Let's just test it. 1, 2, 3. Dot shift. We're mutating. T is okay. It does shift. It does exactly what it wants. It's always the 0th one. This looks ugly, but I think it'll work. This dot active indexes. Execution state won't have that. Execution state will just be this. So it's like what we had. Execution state. Next execution state. That makes more sense. Okay. And then the active indexes is equal to an object that has 0, and kind of wonder if I should have done it for these two. It would be 0, even, and odd, and these would be arrays. Cool. That's done. There's a lot of state in this component. Lots of state in here. I'd like to put the state somewhere else and then just have this call functions, but we don't have that advantage at the moment. Let's do that. The point of this is that this functionality was wrong. We need to check if that, we could store this in a variable. I just don't want to. There's no reason for doing it, but it's like a long thing here. Active index equals this value. That's the active index. It's always the one at the 0, and we're shifting otherwise. We could put it's a stack essentially. No, it's a queue. It's a queue, so we need to shift. Once we do this, we shift. I wonder if I could just get this. Active index array, that. And if we're going to mutate anyway, let's do this. Active index array 0, and then down here, active index array, because that will never change, and then shift. And the execution state is equal to the name. Then we're going to shift that later. Not shift it, change it. I think everything is still fine. My nose gets itchy when I'm doing this for some reason. But now we've got all our code, we execute. And I know we still haven't gotten to the point where we're checking against the length. That's something important. I want to make sure we do that at some point, but at the moment I'm not going to mess with it. Because we want this to stop at the length. We are calling the functions, but based on an end value, we would output. I don't want to really deal with that right now. Can I read property name of undefined? Where is this happening? Here. Execution info.name. They all have a name. They definitely have a name. Oh. Yeah, they still have a name. I don't understand. I wish I could refresh it and see that breakpoint again. But because of the way we're executing, that's not possible. What I have to do is copy that much code, paste it in. And then where it says constructed, I can put my breakpoints in right here. Now I want to put my breakpoint at that point. And then I want to call these other functions at the bottom, which I think, yeah, I've already got them right here. We'll call this, we'll go one by one, step by step. This is, and execution name is 0, and then the active array index, active index array, that's what I expect. Yes, correct. But saying this thing doesn't have a name, the name is 0 on this pass. Am I not passing it back in? That's what it is. I just need to pass all this to the next execution layer. That's all. Cool. Now it should work. We got 0. We called odd did not execute. It should have a loop going right now where it should execute. We can check the current state of it. 0, even, odd. We can check the, yeah, I just want to see what the state is. The state is odd. We have called odd. There should be an active index for odd. There is not, which means I forgot to copy this code. Now I'm wondering if I should pass these in and then do to push it somewhere else. These are like very carbon copy functions at this point. And I could do a little bit more to it. This is the even index. And this is the odd index. Okay, cool. Still not working. But again, we'll check the state. We should have, they're all zeros. We got 3 zeros. We should have had 2 zeros, an odd and an even. It's currently set to odd. We only got one of the zeros out. Oh, we also, I thought we were shifting. Okay. Active index is .0. Dot even. Dot odd. That was the problem. That makes a lot of sense now. Fresh, and we'll do it again. Cool. We got our output, which is what we expect. They're not going to be joined because I have really no way of doing that. This print value function that I'm giving it, I would have to, I can do something. Output, okay. We're going to call that, and then at this point, we're going to do a function that updates output. What if I made the function a name here, going to output, yeah, just concat, and then I'll concat to whatever the value is. That's what's going to come in from print value, or print number. Okay. So we've already executed here. We shouldn't have any active listeners. I'm going to make sure that we're cleaning up after ourselves. We do not. And all the indexes look correct. Let's make sure that should be at 2. That value should be at 4. That should be at 3. Good. That's all good. How do we tweak this more? We're calling the function a certain number of times, but they're saying basically for any given n, like you stop execution and you're like, I don't care anymore. And you need to essentially deconstruct it at that point. There's no like component will unmount for this. There's no way to deconstruct it when we are past a certain value. But I would need to add all the indexes, and I would have to have a listener that adds all the indexes and stops execution if we're past that number. The only way I can think to do that is basically whenever these get called, we don't do anything. We'll create a new function that's called outputs, number of outputs. No, get number of outputs. Yes. Okay, this is our number of outputs, is all this stuff added together, I think. Let's see, so if this is 1, that means we have 1 output. Yeah, this is 1, this is 1, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. That's the number of outputs. And this should be 2n. So n is this number. We want to check if this number is less than or equal to, this number times 2 is less than or equal to that, all this crap added together. It looks awful. I don't know how to write this better. Can I do it like this? Is this readable? It looks like it works. And then we need to call this at the beginning of every single one. And if you do have it, you return. If get number of output, that's not even the right number then. This is not get number of outputs. This is if we should execute. So how do we say if we're done executing? We're done executing. Cool. Yeah, that'll work. Does that make sense? I should have just run this in Node. I really should have. It would have been easier just to, every time I saved, it would have put the output there. Maybe this dot. And I had to fix the one at the top. And maybe I should call it as a function instead of just checking if it exists, because then I'll get nothing logged. Okay. There. That will stop execution now. If n is 2, in this case it's 1, but if it's 2, can I just put this down here? If n is 2, then this should stop at that point. If I do this again, it should not work. And I can change the order in a second. I'm just not there yet. This is a let. Okay. I want to know what output is. Can I like at the end here log output? Is it going to work if I'm waiting on threads? set timeout and get the output. What if that happens and I log the output? Every time you add a new one, I just log the output. I can figure that out later. I want to know what the output is though. Output.info output. I'm going to call it output. I know which one it is. Okay, that's our little debug. And then this, it's complaining again because we're blah, 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 blah. Okay. Happy now? Thank you. Okay, what do we get? We got 1. Our output is nothing. Why did we get 1? What put this out? Join to output should return a value. No, because we're mutating. We're not mutating here though. We're not mutating. Our code has to do this because their code is not doing it. I could have just done plus equals. That's fine. I'll just be explicit. I think plus equals actually be more explicit that we're mutating. Yeah, I want to be more explicit that I'm actually mutating. There. Okay. That is not the correct output because this got logged. This function is not working. Is not execute. Okay. Number of output values is 2 times 2 is 4. And is that less than or equal to this stuff? This starts at 0. Yeah. But when we get 1 value in, that's 1. When we get 2 values in, that's 2. I think this needs to be, this is offline one situation. Yeah. That did not fix it at all. As long as this is less than that, that'll never be true. This is very trial and error right now. I just don't care. I absolutely don't care. I just want to make sure it works. I don't think that's going to work. What is wrong with this? Okay, let's think through this again. This is 4. This is always 4 right now. They're all 0. I want to finish this before it's too late. Okay, they're all 0. The first time we get a value of 0, that's just 1. Second time we get 1, that's 1, that's 1. That is 2. And then we have called even again. No, we call 0 again. Hang on, I'm not doing this right. 0, 0. Okay. 0 index gets updated right there. Boom. Odd index gets updated. 0 index gets updated. Even index gets updated. 0 index gets updated. And this is not going to work anyway. Because we could call these in whatever order we want. How do we know that they're going to be... I think the way this code is supposed to work is that you're only calling the amount that you execute. They're just being called asynchronously. I think that's what it's supposed to do. Because otherwise you'd have no way of knowing. You have no way of knowing when you're done executing until you have to log yourself how many print functions you've called. That would be even better. Instead of at the top here of doing this, I would essentially be like wrapping every print number function in something that does the done executing. And then at some point, then we like set it and we can kill this class off. There's no real way to unset the class except for taking this variable here and then setting it to nothing, like null. There's no other way to get rid of it. I don't want to make it too complex. I just want to get it done. I'll leave it like this. But when we called 0 again, this should have been 5. But at the point we're calling 0 the second time, this is 2. This is correct. Actually, this is not correct. This should have ended. It was like this. It was like this. And then we call even. And then it becomes like this. And now it won't execute anymore. When the 0 got called, this should not be executing. I want to know what these are. I want to know what's going on here. I got to console log this. Console log this. We will not copy everything. It's weird. It's like I have to keep checking the state looks right. We will do a breakpoint. Get rid of the console. Where are we going to put our breakpoint? Where's a good place to put the breakpoint? Oh yeah, it's done executing. That's where we want to check because something's wrong in this calculation here. Now what we want to do is we want to call all the crap down here. What have I called? Let's look at the console again. We just did it. Oh, and we created the functions. Okay, cool. We'll call 0. Should get 0. The output values times 2 should be 2. And then this is, sir, I can't copy this. Yeah, that's correct. That's what I expect. Okay. We got 0. We should have oh, we're stuck. Okay. I don't know if this counted because I did it when it was stuck executing. Okay. We did hit it. Let's check our state real quick. Make sure we're correct. It didn't like fire that without me knowing. Okay, yeah. There's one sitting for odd, actually. Technically, we have called odd twice. I think when I clicked to proceed, I had hit this a second time. That's fine. We did something weird that it would not normally do. So we messed it up. Yeah, that's 3. That should go. So if I call even, it should not output even. That's 4. Okay, can I like copy this and find out if it's true? It's false. Maybe if I return this value, it'd be great. That would be really fantastic. I wonder why nobody caught that. Oh no. Man, okay. There we go. For anybody who's in the stream late, what we're doing is we were looking at this. I solved it with RxJS in maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And it even did a little bit more complex stuff where the values are coming in and you're having to like worry about multiple values. I am worrying about multiple values in here, but because I have to stop after a certain number of executions, I'm trying to be very specific with it. We're going to call these in whatever order, but there's only going to be a fixed number of each that will match this output that we're looking for. We're looking for an output like that for 5, an output like that for 2. My code is not that smart at this point. It's dumb. It's just checking these indexes. I actually need to check the index, a certain number of indexes. I need to make sure that for the number of executions that there are more of these. Actually, yeah, there are 2 of these for every one of these, and then that number, then I need to check it against the number of output values. I can do it in a different way. I can do it where I'm taking this callback that I'm passing in, and I'm like tracking the number of times this print numbers, this callback gets called. I can make sure that the number of times it's called, that's all I care. Because anytime we call print number, that's what should be checked against. Nothing else except for that. And we can do that. I'm just thinking, the thing is, this is like still going. In here, we would also need another check. So we would need to check here to say, don't even execute this waiter function because it's going to cause problems. And we also want to tell it, I basically, you know what? I can do something. I don't need this. I want it basically anytime you call this again, once it's done, it doesn't go anymore. And I also need some way over here to basically say, don't call any more print number functions if we're complete. And also update the number of completed. This dot completed printed numbers, plus equals 1 to numbers. That could work. I can track this. And then over here, I can say if this dot printed numbers is, I really don't like this now. I want to make another callback, but is greater than this dot number of output values. I can put this somewhere else, this logic here. This dot is done executing. It would be like this. Is equal to, really, because it'll never be more. We will never allow this to get out of hand. Then we are done. We return. That's it. And then we don't want print, and we won't update the print numbers, and then we can add that check here, which we already did, and we add that check here, and that will be good. So that will also simplify this logic a lot. Yep. We got to set this up in our constructor. Man, classes are so much more complex. There's way more work that I have to do to get this to work than I would have had to with RxJS. Like I showed it earlier, this is a lot more complicated. Also, part of it's that I'm not used to working in classes anymore. I have not done this kind of code in a while. The last thing I want to do is this callback. I can create another function for this callback. So it can do this. Let's do that real quick. A function that returns a function, essentially. We'll call it a callback func for now. And we'll figure out what we're going to do with it in a bit. And we will return another function. We know this much. Actually, the function it returns will be like that. Yeah, it's this function. So this is our value. This seems so familiar. I feel like this is the waiter function. This used to be the waiter function at some point. It takes a value and it takes a print function, print number function. Does this dot zero value? That's fine. I guess we could have. That's fine. And now we don't have to do that thing where we're creating the value first and then passing it in, because this will do that for us. This is our, I don't want to call it a callback function. Print function, print number. I don't want to call it print number. Then be like this dot print number and you pass in the print number. That's really what it is though. This is so confusing. If I saw this, I would assume this is this dot print number, not the print number that comes in. I don't even know this is printing a number. How about this is like output value? I don't care that it's a print number function. I can name these whatever I want. These don't have to be named print number. Let's do that. Let's name these output value. Output value sounds like an output value though. I want to output the value. What if we renamed it to something else, correct? Send value. How about that? We're gonna call it send value. We're gonna send it to somebody else. I don't care where it goes, as long as it goes somewhere. Because like, why do we care? Why do we care about this stuff? Yeah, I don't care if this is printing or not. I just care that I'm sending a value out. We're gonna have this dot print number here. And like I said, this dot print number will take our object, and the object it's gonna take has these values in it. I just cut those. Can I just do this? No. Oh yeah, that does work. Okay. And we'll call that and we'll pass these in. Send value is going to be the print value. It's just that value now. And the 0 index was the value. It's 0 value. This does 0 value. Yeah. And then this is gone. Oh, so much better. But I feel like there's a lot of little intertwined logic. It's very tightly coupled at the moment. We can make it less coupled. I think there's a lot of actually decoupling that I'm doing right now. It's just not enough. It's not enough for me. We were having to do this, right? Gone. Don't need it. Now we just pass it here. Much better. I'm hoping this is going to be valuable to somebody. It's somewhat valuable to me to have figured out this set timeout loop, but I already knew that. That's nothing specifically new. It's just interesting to solve this as if you were doing it with C++, but in a single thread. Even though the execution can be asynchronous. Like these can come in at any time. I'm in control of when they happen. Because of how JavaScript's event-based, you can do stuff like that. Is there anything else I need to do? I think I've solved all the crazy stuff. Okay. Let us execute. Hey, we got something. I put 2 in. I wish I put 1 in because we're not getting the right value, but we did get something. What if I do output now? No, still wrong. Okay. What is going on? Did I not put the ×2? Is that the reason? I just didn't put the ×2. Everything's perfect. Yes. Hey. So what if we now create another one? This is a const. Let's just refresh and do it again. I don't want to mess with it. Okay, what if we put 5, like the example? Do we get the intended output? Yes, we don't. No, we don't. Why did we not get the intended output? The heck happened? Obviously, this is not going to work, but I'll fix it in a second. I was so close to being done with this. And then it broke. Okay, cool. So anytime I reach this area of the code, it will log out for me. I could put a breakpoint. I could worry about that later. 10. Yes, 10 is correct. Why is it 0, 0? Why is this halved? Because there are 2 times it gets called. That's fine. Oh, I see why we only got 5 numbers. Because I didn't pass in anymore. And also, we haven't tested putting these out of order. We did earlier, so I know they're probably going to work. But I need to know all the values we're putting in. We are not putting in 5 values. We're putting in 10. Is that right? 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4, 0, 5. And then I'll mix them up in a second. Once I make sure this works, we can mix them up. Okay, put that down here. I'm glad this was the problem because this is like much simpler. We just didn't pass it in. That's what I expect. Okay, we can get rid of our console log. Let's make sure that is what I expect. Yes, that is what I expect. It's working. Now I'm going to add a few numbers and I want to see if it breaks. Actually, we could just do it async. It's async. We just keep doing it. And then we do output and it is still correct. So yeah, this is good. This is working. It does not accept more, but if we look at the state of it, obviously it has like listeners. No, it will not create the listeners because we are done. We are done. These are all gone. I wonder if I can do it fast enough. Let's test that. If I do it fast enough, does it like screw it up? There's like a chat in the way. Why would I even do that? Who does that? Who puts the chat in the way of the output there? We got the output we expected, but I'm curious now of the state of 0, even, odd. The state of it is that, nope, we're good. It worked correctly. Now the question is, can I mix up this order and will it happen the way you expect? That's pretty mixed up. That's not going to be how it executes. Zeros are supposed to come first. No, it worked. We're not like, we don't have a timer in here. We're not like catching them and timing them and stuff. This is the only reason this didn't work when it output is because we put set timeout, but we didn't put a set timeout based on like the actual timeout. And what I really want to do is set timeout 0. So we don't even need this. There's no reason to pass that in. And then we can tweak how this looks. So I don't have to pass in 2 args. And that still won't work, but yeah, it's right. The reason this is not working is because by the time this gets fired is at this point, but the zeros are still like executing. They're still like doing their own set timeouts. If we actually put a real set timeout at this point, some like value of even, I don't know, 20, then by the time this outputs, it would have gotten all these. This was just a catch-all at the first time I did it. Because they were in order, it works fine. Because then you never hit this. If they're in order, you never hit this. It just goes here. But once you start doing these things, yeah, then you have to actually, in your joined output, you need some way to, maybe like a promise or something. And you got to keep chaining or something like that until you know that you've gotten enough value. See, I could write in this in RxJS really easy. Because I would just take until the number, just like we did in this example here. I would take until the number times 2. And then I would, we don't even need to take until the number times 2. I would just keep outputting them. But I would need to know when to output, which is why the take's important. This is it. I got it. Now we have 2 solutions to the same problem. I'm going to get rid of this. This solution, what we're doing is we're constructing. We're getting the number of output values, just like the example here, where it gives you n, which is the number of output values, times 2, technically. So it says somewhere in here, it must be 2n. This is 2n, 2 times 5. Oh. But yeah, why do this twice? There we go. This is, I don't want to call it n, though. I'm just going to call it n, just like the example. God, that sucks. What the heck is n? I don't want to call it number either. This is like not really useful. I'd rather call it number than n. Okay, it's the number times 2. That's the number of output values. The printed numbers it just keeps going up. We have 2 places that we're checking for it. One place we're checking for it is right when you call one of these functions. It does not set off the asynchronous execution. The other is when the asynchronous execution ends, we need to check it again to see if we even care to output the value. Because we do not want to call this if it asynchronously comes back and says, oh, I had another 0 queued up. Here we go. I don't want that. I don't want that. We rename this to send value instead of print number because I don't care that it's printing a number. This code cares that it's printing a number. I do not care because they're sending me a function. There's no reason for me to know what that function is doing. But this code sucks, but it's how we're doing the active indexes. And it was very easy, as you saw, to look at the state. I can look at the state here. I can tell exactly what it's doing. I can see every state everything's in. I wish these maybe weren't an object and these were in an object. That would actually be nice because it's just like these indexes. I should have done it the same. There's no reason for me to change it right now. And then here, it's very easy. I can look at the active indexes. I can see what's happening, like what's queued. Because if there's an active index, what that means is there is a loop going on behind the scenes, and it is constantly looping on a set timeout, waiting to see if the active index is itself and the next execution state is set to itself. And if that happens, then it calls and does its thing. And that can happen still, but then the print value will never execute. And that's fine. The print value doesn't have to execute. As you see here, even if the print value doesn't execute, then it will still shift that number out of the array and switch to the next execution state. So it is still ongoing and constantly going. This is the exact same code that this is doing here. Well, it's not the exact same code. I'm doing a little bit more different stuff here. Because I have to do this joining on the outside, whereas in here I have to do it on the inside. And this doesn't even work anymore, so I don't know why I'm showing it. If you look at the difference between these two, let's see. This is I've elongated this too. This is 83 lines, including the last. This is 163 lines for just the class, and it doesn't include the execution. This includes the execution, although the threads are in somewhere else. So this is like the thread creation right here, which I've done in a different file, which is these are the threads. This is nothing. It's 20 lines of thread code, and this is like I said earlier. There's a lot more in here than there probably should be. You don't have to have these new lines. I do it because it's easier, and then I can do something like this, especially when I'm trying to share the video. What did you think of me creating the threads like this and then running them asynchronously in a pipeline like this, where all of the state is contained in each step of the pipeline, versus me creating a class. Creating a class here, 0, even, odd class that has all the state in it. And like I said, I could fix these. I don't even just do it real quick. That way, if somebody looks at this in the future, they'll know. Current index? No, it's the next indexes. Okay, they just all start at 0. And then this is. So what did you think about this though? Would you ever want to do maintenance on this? Let's say I built this in an application like this code here. Would you want to do maintenance on this code? Do you even know what it's doing? Do you understand this? Do you want me to make this another function? Because it already says waiter. I already have a bunch of information here. I don't even know if waiter is like the right name. What would I call it? Go off and execute on your own time. When you're ready, go stand in line. Do you want me to call this stand in line? Does that even make sense? It is queue. Oh, queue. How about that? Okay. I would probably call it add to queue. Execution queue. Add to queue. It's fine. That's what it is. It is a queue that we're adding it to. But it has to keep checking to see if it's the current value. We're polling for the value. What I'd like is to use callbacks and events, event handlers. Instead of changing the name here to 0, what would happen is the next execution state would actually be the next function that gets executed. But we haven't created the function yet. That's why we have to do it this way. If we had an event where we're listening, we would do window.add event listener, and we would listen to the event next execute next state. We could do that. And I know a lot of this depends on the browser right now with this. I think you could do this. There's a way to do this in Node. You do create a new event emitter, and you can do this kind of stuff. And then here we would have a callback function that looks for, it would look for details. And we can even create custom events to do this behind the scenes. We don't have to look at details. We can create the event ourselves. When execute next state happens, we get the details. The details would be like details.name. And this would be 0. All of our functions would listen to it. So instead of polling constantly based on setTimeout, we would just be listening to this. And then when that occurs, we execute. That polling that we're doing is happening behind the scenes anyway. JavaScript does this for us. There's absolutely no reason for us to have to do that. I don't know why we have to do all this logic to do all this. I am trying to solve it like you would have in C++. That was the challenge here. Somebody did challenge me, and that was really nice. But it is way more work to do it this way than just setting up event listeners and stuff like that. But the event listeners, even with a class, can be confusing. Like, even when I was showing you that, okay, then they execute. How would you even know if you got to add to queue and there's like a big event listener in here and you don't really know? And once you're done listening, you've got to kill that listener that you created. You have to create a function pointer and then remove the listener from the pointer. That gets even more confusing. This kind of stuff that when I'm thinking through it, that's why I use RxJS. That's why I do this. It's because concurrency is way, way, way simpler versus this where it's a lot harder and I have no clue what's happening. If I know 100% they're only going to send me a certain number of zeros and odds and evens, and it's going to equal the number of executions that they gave me in the first place, then it's a lot easier for me to even write this code because my take is correct here, but I don't have to account for the fact that there could be a bunch of these in memory. Right now, I'm not accounting for that. I'm just subscribing to them and being like, okay, you can have all these things going in memory, but I don't care. In the future, I would actually want to care. I'd have to write my own custom zip function that has, I think actually zip has that, if I think of it now. It's probably got something where it starts killing out values after a certain point in time. What is zip all? Does it take an array or does it take an object? It looks like an arguments, but it doesn't tell me. This is saying it's array syntax. Where's the example? There's no example. What does this do? Where's zip all? No. Okay, I don't know. I've never seen it. I bet it's an operator. You know what? Zip all is probably an operator. Let's see. It says function operators. Yep, it's an operator. If we go here, can you even read that on the stream? That's a good question. But if we go to zip, this is an operator called zip, which is, I thought, deprecated. This is the observable zip. So if we look at this here, does it take a second barrier? There's only one arg. If we look at the top here, observable input, okay. It takes arguments as observables and then returns something, an array of the values of those observables. Not really sure. There's no other argument that you can pass to zip to tell it the options. You can't tell it, okay, you only store this much in memory. So you can get in the memory problem. Did they say anything here? No, they don't even say anything about the fact that this can be a memory problem. There could be leaks. The only way I would deal with the leaks, if I was doing it with zip, is I would do it at this level. And I'd have to have some way of storing the state of how many times each of these have fired. And at some point, I have to say, I can't accept any more values. Like you're going to kill my memory. I got to have a max queue size. And I have to start killing off old values or something if I'm not hitting it. This is where something like Kafka would be good, where you're putting stuff on a Kafka stream and I'm only pulling in some values. So I can tell it when I want to pull the values in. I don't have to necessarily be just receiving them straight in. Where all these threads are set up, I would have something down here on this tap down here, which executes this and maybe puts it on a different queue, a different Kafka topic. And then I would also tell all of these threads I'm ready for another set of numbers. And I don't even have to just do it there. I can do it at the point that this zip fires. I can tell these threads like, hey, give me the next one. That's like a generator syntax in JavaScript where you're pulling the data, but it's on your time. Whereas like when you're pulling the data, you're just doing it at constant time. You're not telling anything when to do it or like why you would want to do it or anything like that. At least when you're pulling the data, you can tell it when to pull. And that's really important because these blind pushes and stuff could cause memory problems. This is called back pressure. This is a big problem with back pressure. And Kafka topics have ways of handling this so long as your Kafka topic, and there are other things at RabbitMQ and all that stuff, as long as you have a way to store that data so that if there's extra data, you're not just throwing it out. You don't want to throw out data a lot of the times. Everything matters. You don't want somebody to have a user account that they've created and you're like sitting processing them. And then you had too many, so you just have to start throwing things out. It'd be better to just put it on the topic, the Kafka topic or somewhere else or in a database so that if you don't want to have a lot of values in your Kafka topic, then you've got like a database backup, and then maybe I'm pinging the database and it's removing values out of the database, just like you would with, I don't know. It's easier with the topic because I can just point at a different index and tell it, okay, I'm done with that index, give me the next one. Just what we're doing here, but it'd be a lot simpler. So let's go ahead and update these real quick because I don't want to forget about it. So it's indexes 0. Did I call it current index? What the heck did I call it? Next indexes dot 0. Okay. I hate these mutations also. I would never write these in my own code. But because we're in a class and because this is like me trying to finish something in time, as you can see, it's almost midnight here. And you can't see it, can you? It's almost midnight where I'm at. Then I needed to finish this quick. I had to basically do what I could to get it done and worry about the effects of my actions later. And thankfully, I would never write this code with the class, so I don't have to worry about that. That saves me a lot of time, not having to worry about the mutation. Now, the thing is, these mutations could have got me. They could have been big gotcha situations. They're not. And the reason they're not big gotcha situations is because, I don't know. I don't know why they're not big gotcha situations. Yes, the way this code was written, it wasn't a big deal. A lot of the time, it would have been a big deal. I would never have wanted to deal with those. What is this? 0? Yeah. Okay, we got to test the code one more time. Just make sure everything's cool here. Even. Can't read property even of undefined. Where? Next values dot even? It is next values dot even. Next value. That's the only one that's wrong. I think. Based on what I just did real quick. Okay. Output. What number did I pass in? Are we done? Oh, I broke the code. Why didn't I save it? Why didn't I like put this in another file or Git or something? That's 5 values, right? There should not be a 0 at the end. Okay. What did we change? We changed this. It would be this dot 0 this dot 0 index. This dot next indexes dot 0 should be just next index. I don't think this should be plural. That would be really confusing. But I'm not gonna mess with it yet. I will fix these and then fix those later. Where execution info? Yeah, this is another one. Even index. This dot indexes dot even. Okay, and then this one odd index. This dot next indexes dot odd. A lot of people I think that are watching are like, oh, you could have done TDT and it would have made it better and whatever. Yep, I regret not doing this in Node or somewhere else. I really do. It would have been way easier, but I already went this way and I didn't have any time to change it. I didn't want to spend time when somebody was waiting to see what would happen. I thought it was going to be done a lot quicker, like this one, but it wasn't. I'm stuck with this. All right, so this did work correctly. This is retaining it, and now we got to rethink this. Instead of active indexes, is this active index? No, because I think that's a single value. Technically, it could be active index though, but I'm just gonna leave them. I'm gonna leave them. I like it like this. Okay, this is gonna end the stream. If you think you could do it better, or there would be something that you would want to do where you think maybe I could have changed these or something, I'm gonna try to get this repo up there in GitHub, and you can tell me what you think. Actually, it is in GitHub. I just gotta go to Git and push it up. And I'll push up these files. I'm probably gonna organize them a bit so that you can get to them. But the real question is, was this worthwhile? Was this something you could learn from? Is this something where you feel like, hey, this is interesting how you could do the same stuff in JavaScript that you can do in other languages? Was it interesting to see how you have to do it with a class and why I like RxJS and why I think this is a superior method of dealing with concurrency? Those are things that I'd like to hear back. I don't like writing like this personally, and hopefully you can see why. I can write like that. It's not like I don't want to write like that because I can't. It's way harder for me though, especially because I'm out of practice, especially because I do not write code like this ever anymore. That it is much, much harder for me to go back and remember how to do it. What are the restrictions I'm dealing with? How do I deal with this? Oh, I have local states. How do I use this local state to my advantage? Those are the things I'm really thinking about when I'm trying to write this one that I'm not thinking about here, which is basically like, I've got values. How do I pass them to the next place? If I need another value again, how do I get it back there? If I need a thread A at the point that I'm doing this concat map, how do I get it there? I would just add it in the object. Stuff like that. I do the same kinds of things in RxJS consistently. I feel like I'm doing always the same thing. No matter what, I'm picking a function, I'm doing like the same kind of execution, and there's only little slight differences. When I'm using classes, this is a custom class. This is custom built for this specific scenario, this particular kind of execution plan, this kind of work. Now, some things are like this print number potentially could be moved out, but not really. This part can be moved out. Like we showed earlier, this could be something that's more reusable. When you do your resolve, you pass something in here, blah, 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 blah. That's essentially promise.resolve.then, but it's not, because setTimeout, the way it works with the JavaScript execution stack, it's about micro and macro tasks. setTimeout like goes to the bottom, and all this stuff has to execute in real time. And promise.then will also execute in that frame, but it'll execute after some of it. So I think that's what they call like micro tasks. Like basically all of your execution is synchronous, and those happen in order in the event loop. But then the promises happen after that. And there's part of the same loop, but they happen right after micro tasks. And then the setTimeout is a macro task. What happens is the setTimeout is done after that. It waits for all those things to finish up. And then the macro tasks execute. At some point, like it has to go through. I don't know how you make sure 100% it goes. But also the benefit of this way of using setTimeout is like one of my favorite functions, even though I hate it secretly. The reason is because you don't get into a situation where your functions are doing Stack Overflows. Because as far as I know, once you do a setTimeout, it kills the previous instance of the function. So normally when you execute synchronously, you have one function called another function until it's done. And like you saw earlier, if you were watching the stream, that it killed it. Like we killed it multiple times. I had to kill the running task in the browser to get that execution to work properly. That's why you don't want just a while loop, something like that. You want the setTimeout. You want to do something like this where you're calling the setTimeout over and over again as a setTimeout, because that gives your code enough time to execute what it needs to do, and then it comes back and executes the next setTimeout. It did not work when I did it with promises because it was doing microtasks, which is very similar to the while loop. That was not good enough. You needed setTimeout so that it would execute them, wait for other things to happen, and then come back and execute again, which is exactly what we needed here. This code down here, I need to tell it when to do these things myself. I need to tell it asynchronously when to call these. I needed to asynchronously be executing. Even though promises are asynchronous, when the event loop is concerned and it's looping over itself multiple times, it is not asynchronous. It is asynchronous, but it's not going to act like, it's not going to let me put inputs there and execute on them. So that's the difference between them. This is another reason also why I like callbacks over promises in general, because you have a little bit more control there. The callbacks itself aren't the fix. It's the setTimeout here, but it's the versatility you can get for situations like these where you need to queue things up. You got to be aware of this when you're developing, and I don't know how to explain it. If you're using promises, you might not realize that you're delaying execution sometimes. Hopefully that's a lot of information for people. Hopefully that helps you if you ever come into a situation like this. Thank you very much for coming to my stream and asking questions and giving me a challenge. That was definitely what I wanted, was to be challenged, and you did challenge me. I was not expecting this. I did not expect to have to do all this code. I never want to do this again, but doesn't mean I won't accept another challenge in the future to do something similar. Because I think you guys can learn the difference between what you know and what I know. And that's going to be really useful to a lot of people. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
I hope you enjoyed that video. Figuring out how to take RxJS and convert it to C++ was definitely not an easy solution. Now, again, it wasn't actually C++. It's JavaScript in a class-based structure, but it's similar to the person who asked the question to write it in a C++ style. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight into how I would normally build things versus how I have to figure out how to build things from scratch in a weird way that I've never done before.